These are the internet's favorite cream cheek products. You cannot escape these. These are so buzzed about, but which ones are actually worth it? We're going to figure that out today because we're doing another tier list. I'm going to be ranking all of these super popular cheek products head to head. You seem to be really liking these tier list videos, so I've also done one about super viral products in general. I've done one about the most hyped up makeup of the year according to you, so I can leave both of those linked down below. But quickly, let's run down the scale. I have timestamps. If you know the scale already, feel free to skip ahead. But this is what we're working with, okay? There are 5 different categories these could be ranked between. The top one is called Worth the Hype. We've got I'm Impressed, It's Average, I Don't Get It, and They Lied to Us. So I think the names are pretty self-explanatory there. But of course, the higher up the ranking is, the better my review. The lower down, that's where we're gonna put products that are kind of underwhelming, okay? So let's jump straight in. I've got powders and creams, I've got blush, bronzer, highlight. Let's start with probably the ones that really have ignited this craze, okay? The wands from Charlotte Tilbury. This was the original, and now every brand has done their own. We've seen e.l.f. do it, Flower, Milani. We've even seen high-end brands like Tarte and others creating their own version of these squeeze tube cheek products. And there are 3 from Charlotte Tilbury, but I'm going to rank them individually. We're gonna rank the blush, the contour, and the highlight. So I want to start off with the contour. What I will say about this is that it's very user-friendly, okay? So I'll do swatches of a lot of these. This one, I have the lighter variation. This is called Fair Medium. It looks super deep here. You might be thinking to yourself, that would never work for Kelly for her skin tone. And that was my fear when I first purchased this, but oddly enough, it blends out pretty seamlessly. For a contour shade, it doesn't lean too cool tone, so it's not necessarily going to be giving you that really natural gray-like shadow, but it's very user-friendly, okay? That being said, it is expensive, and a couple of years back, I likely would have ranked this even higher, but I think there are a lot of fantastic alternatives these days, so I'm gonna put it in the category of it's average. I think for the price, there are a lot of alternatives to give you an easy contoured look without breaking the bank. And if you're looking at any of these, if you were like, Kelly, I'm only gonna buy one of the wands, which one would it be? Immediately, we could get rid of the contour one. I think these 2 are better, okay? So let's talk about the highlight wand. I have mine in the shade Spotlight. This is a beautiful highlighter. I'm even saying that as someone who's not really into highlight, but I think the effect that this leaves on the cheeks is one that looks very lit from within. It doesn't have any really noticeable glitter particles to it. It's pretty seamless, very skin-like. It's glowy, which is what you want from a highlighter. It wears well, it's pretty. I'm gonna put this, I'm gonna say I'm impressed. I think that it's a little bit overrated. I think there are alternative highlights that create a fantastic look, but I don't think this is bad at all. And I think, I've never regretted purchasing this. Even for that very steep price point, I think it's a good highlighter. But I think the star of the show is the blush formula, and this is arguably the most hyped up one, and I think it's for great reason. I have mine in the shade Pinkgasm, which also happens to be the most popular shade. This is phenomenal if you like a glowy blush. You have to be into that look. It has somewhat of like a shimmery finish on the cheeks, so you know, it's not necessarily going to be smoothing, but I wouldn't say it emphasizes texture. You know what I mean? This, for me, is worth the hype. I was so excited when I purchased this years ago. I think it's a phenomenal formula. But what I always say is if you do not want to splurge on this, this is something you could basically make, because the texture and the look of this is essentially a liquid blush mixed with a liquid highlighter. So if you already have something like that in your collection, you have a liquid blush and a liquid highlighter, it doesn't have to be a liquid highlighter even. It could be a glowy primer. Anything with that consistency and that almost sheen to it, mix them together, and on the cheeks, it's going to be incredibly reminiscent of this. And the thing about this formula and just different blush tones in general, even if it's not an identical dupe when swatched out, it's gonna look the same on the cheeks, okay? So if you wanna save 40 bucks, you could kind of replicate this with things you already have, but if you were willing to splurge, I think this is worth the hype. You know, I already have this in my hand, so let's talk about it. The Saie Blush, specifically in Chili. I don't know why this shade is so popular from Saie, so much more popular than any of the others, but I think this is a really great dewy blush formula. You have to like a hyper dewy finish on the cheeks. If you're a matte lover, I don't think this formula would be one I would direct you towards. I think the doe foot applicator on this is very user-friendly. It allows you to kind of dot the product on the back of your hand or onto your cheek if you prefer that placement. I think this blends out effortlessly, but the qualm I have with this is that the wear time is not phenomenal. Also, you hear these sounds? I'm so sorry, that's gross. But the wear time on this, it didn't really knock my socks off, okay? In general, when it comes to liquid cheek products that have a dewy finish, they tend to fade a little bit faster than liquid cheek products that are more mattified, which makes sense because this just isn't going to be as sat down on the skin as something more matte. So that's going to be the trade-off here. You have to be prepared for a little bit of fading throughout the day. That being said, I think it is a good formula. I think there's a great drugstore dupe and we'll get there, but I'm going to put this in the category of it's average. I don't think this blush is going to change your life, but I don't think you will be disappointed by it, which is why I'm putting it kind of in that middle point category. I think there's so many good drugstore alternatives to this, and today's video is more so a ranking so we can kind of like compare them and see what takes the top spot. But if you want a super thorough video, I have a full blush collection. Like, you know, today we're doing all kinds of cheeks, highlight, blush, bronzer, but I have a full blush collection video I can leave linked down below. I filmed it overhead. I did swatches, comparisons. So if you want to like really get down into the details, I'll have that video linked. Okay, let's stick with Saie, I guess. This is their Sun Melt Bronzer. This is a really good cream bronzer. I don't think it's the best, but it's a very good one, and I understand the hype that it gets. This formula is a bit more stiff in the pan. I wouldn't say it's as emollient as a few other cream bronzers that we're going to mention. And because of that, I think it sits on the skin slightly, I don't want to say matte. It doesn't appear matte on the skin, but the finish is not as like dewy and almost sticky as some other cream bronzers. And for that, I enjoy it. I think the longevity is there with this product compared to a few of the others. I mean, it does fade a little bit if you're not setting it with a powder over top, but I think it lasts better than some of the dewier cream bronzers that I have. I have mine in the shade Light Bronze, which was initially the lightest shade, but they have since come out with one that is even lighter than this. I think for me, this I'm gonna put in its average. I don't have any problems with this. I wouldn't say there's anything underwhelming or disappointing about this, but it doesn't stand out amongst some of the other cream bronzers that I've tried that you will see ranked a little bit higher, which is why I've really been relishing in filming these ranking videos, because I think they're helpful on another level, because a lot of makeup products these days are good quality. It's rare to find a launch that is like so disappointing and garbage and impossible to use. But in some ways that makes it harder to figure out like what is the absolute best product. And that's where I like kind of putting these head to head to see where they rank. That is a good product. There's nothing wrong with it. It is an average cream bronzer, but there are better ones. And I want to start with this one from Merit. So this is their Bronze Balm. I find this fantastic. In my opinion, this is the most user-friendly option. You know, I talked about the Charlotte Tilbury one. I think that's easy for a liquid, but this one from Merit, I think really takes it to the next level because this is essentially blending out itself, okay? There is no effort required. It's a very balmy formula without being too emollient and almost like goopy, waxy, melty on the skin, if you know what I mean. I find that the tone, I have the lightest shade in this one, I find that the tone is so reminiscent of what my skin would look like if I naturally got a little bit of a bronze from the sun. I think this wears well. For me, this one is worth the hype. I will say, regarding application, I tend to pick this up directly with my brush, which is what I like to do with most cream cheek products. That being said, this formula I think also wears well drawn onto the foundation. I'm normally a little bit leery of doing that because most formulas for me kind of tend to disrupt the foundation once I do that. This is one of the few I've found that that doesn't matter. Like you can apply it directly onto the skin, without worrying about the products underneath. Okay, while we're in cream bronzer, let me share one that's been a bit underwhelming for me, and this is the one from Rose Inc. This is their cream bronzer, and I have the shade Parrot K. I liked this a bit more when I first purchased it. I purchased this in 2021, and let me start off by saying cream products in general have a shorter shelf life than powders. We already know that. Here's the swatch against the others. This shade is called Parrot K. But this, I found almost immediately just started to feel very stiff in the pan and somewhat dried out. I just find that this formula felt like it turned a little bit faster than other cream bronzers that I have, making it a little bit harder to work with pretty early on because it became pretty stiff. Also, this shade, you can't tell by looking at my arm, but it pulls so orange on the skin. Like, it doesn't look significantly different than the other bronzer swatches, but as it blends out, it just looks so warm in a very unnatural way. And I just feel like my makeup, I mean, actually, you can probably see in the pan, like this kind of just looks orange, and I rarely like the way that this looks on my skin. So I think I'm gonna have to put this in They Lied to Us. Especially for the price point, I would really avoid this product. I think there are much better formulas for a cream bronzer. I rarely reach for this one, and in addition, the packaging is like so bulky. Like, this seems like a cute, unique package, but it is just unnecessarily large, so I didn't really like this one. This one is like the tip top. This and the Merit, but this is the most inexpensive. So based on price point alone, like, this is the winner. This is the Makeup Revolution Cream Bronzer. This retails for $8, and it is the best cream bronzer, okay? First of all, you'll notice it's very high pigment, especially compared to the others. The tone is even a little bit darker, even though this is the light shade. But this pigment blends out beautifully. Sometimes I have issues with really high pigment creams like this where you start to blend them out and they kind of expand among the cheek and become a little bit muddy, and some spots get a little bit patchy where the product is missing as you're continuing to blend. I've never run into that. I think this is so user-friendly. And the amount of pigment doesn't make it harder to blend out. In my opinion, it makes it easier to work with because you're getting a lot right off the bat. This, for me, completely worth the hype. If anything, it's underhyped. I think it deserves even more buzz. It is just the best cream bronzer, both drugstore or high-end, but especially if you're on a budget, this is the first one I would direct you towards. Let's talk about the e.l.f. Putty blushes. I don't have one anymore because I discontinued it. And I guess I could even lump the putty blushes and bronzers together for this next review. I was so underwhelmed by that formula. I find that they fade almost immediately. The first time you watched me on camera applying that product, by the time I had completed the rest of my makeup, the bronzer was gone. I was like, did I even put bronzer on? It's like my skin was just eating it right off of my face. The wear time on these products is non-existent, I found. And I just think the price point is good, yes, but there are drugstore alternatives that I think have much better longevity and even an easier time using. Like, even with the cream blush, sometimes it would disrupt my foundation. So for the putty cheek products from e.l.f., for me, they lied to us. I thought that formula was gonna be way better than it was, but based on longevity, skip those products. Okay, this is the Saie dupe, okay? I was gonna make you keep you on your toes, but I'm just gonna tell you now, this is the product I think is super comparable to the Dew Blush. This is the Milani Liquid Blush. I'm using dupe kind of loosely here. If anything, I think a better description would be alternative, but in terms of the wear time and the dew and the blendability, these are incredibly similar products, and this is a fraction of the price. So I have the shade Berry Smooch, and this is even somewhat similar to Chili. Remember, Chili was right here on my arm. Berry Smooch is similar, but I would say it has a little bit more reddish purple to the pigment. It's slightly deeper. But once again, on the cheeks blended out, I think the difference is going to be pretty minute between the two shades. The only downside I have with this product is one that I run into a lot with drugstore liquid cheek products. I don't enjoy the packaging, you know, and I'm getting picky here just for comparison's sake. But I think having this type of squeeze tube results in a pretty messy product. It tends to kind of come over the cap. things get dirty. I think it makes it a little bit harder to use. That being said, it can be a bit more sanitary if you're using this maybe on other people. I don't know. It's going to depend on your preference. Aside from that, though, the product is phenomenal. It doesn't wear as well, though. Once again, like I said, I think a lot of these liquid blushes, that have a dewy finish at least, tend to fade a little bit faster. That's what happens with the Milani, but the pigment is nice. The blend is great. Doesn't disrupt my foundation. Mixes well with others. If you want to play around, mix it with a liquid highlight. Mix it with a different blush, up to you. I think it blends really well. Okay, we've got Rare Beauty. They have a highlight and a blush that both come in this similar packaging. Funny enough though, the highlight is significantly larger than the blush in terms of like bulkiness within the packaging. The highlight is 0.5 fluid ounces and the blush is 0.25. Okay, so this is actually double the amount of product even. So I have the highlight in the shade Enchant, which is a really pretty pink. I find myself very frequently mixing this in with a lot of the liquid blushes. Like this oftentimes is my option to mix in with one of these other products to make that really glowy blush. That being said, I didn't find this to be as worth the hype as the highlighter. Like this, or as the blush, excuse me. This is a good highlighter, but I don't think it's like leaps and bounds ahead of any other liquid highlighter. So for me, this one's also going in the category of it's average. I just think, you know, it's fine. It's a good highlight. You won't be disappointed by it, but I also don't anticipate it changing your life. That being said, I do think the blush is worth the hype. This is definitely a very high pigment formula, so you have to be prepared to use a little bit of product and blend kind of quickly. I have the shade Bliss, but I also have Hope. Bliss is the lightest one that they offer, so if you have a fair skin tone, I think this is gorgeous for fair skin while still being pretty easy to blend out. So this I'm putting in the category of worth the hype. I know this one has been viral for a very long time now, but I think it's a great formula. Let's talk about the Milk Makeup Bronzer Stick. So this actually is not just a bronzer stick. I should clarify, this formula comes in highlights and blushes. I used to have the shade Baked like years ago when it first launched, and now I have the shade Toasted. So this is a contour. It's a really nice gray tone contour as well if you're looking for a very cool toned option. But let me start off by saying I kind of hate what they did with this. I purchased this years ago, like I said, when it first launched, and the original size of this was 1 ounce of product. It was ginormous. Arguably, it was too much. Like, you would never use that much. So I understand that they scaled it back, scaled it down, and now it's a bit smaller. But this size is 0.19 ounce. This is what they used to sell as the mini, and now this is the full size. So I don't really love that. This might not be a downside to everyone, but it's kind of a bummer that the full size, but they're still charging you for like a full size, even though they used to sell this as the mini. That being said, they've expanded the shades on this. There are a ton. When I say a ton, I mean a ton. Like of the blush, bronzer, highlight, they have like every shade imaginable. So I love that. I think this formula is easy to work with. It's tough for me for the price point though. Like $24 for this feels kind of steep because let me just compare. This is 0.19 ounces. The Makeup Revolution one is 0.24. Saie is 1 ounce and $32, so $8 more. Rose Ink is 0.52 ounces, and this one is $36, so quite a bit more expensive, but a lot more product. I don't know. This just seems like a little bit of product. Actually, let's look at the Merit one, because this is also a stick bronzer. This is 0.44 ounces for $30. So I have to factor that in. I'm sorry, price point I think is a factor, especially when there are so many like, good products here. To be getting such a small amount for that price point, I think lowers the value in my opinion. So even though this used to be a favorite product for me, I have a harder time recommending it now that they're charging you for a mini. So I'm putting it in, I don't get it. I'm sorry, Milk, I love this product. It's a good product, but I think that was kind of sneaky. Tower 28, the internet's favorite brand, okay? The blushes, I have a couple. This is Magic Hour. This is Dream Hour. Dream Hour, I feel like is their most popular one. This is the one at least I see the most of. I'm running out of room on my arm. Let's start doing down the side of my arm. This is really pretty if you like the bright pink blush. This shade has been so popular for a while now, and this is a really nice, super dewy finish of it. Like, this is very, very dewy on the skin, okay? This shade I like even more though, okay? I really love a nude blush. Once again, this is called Magic Hour, and I think it is so incredibly flattering. It's kind of like a bronzer shade, but it has a little bit more of that peach to it. These, they don't wear super well, okay? They wear all right, but that's kind of, again, the trade-off with a dewy finish. They lack longevity most of the time. That's not like a hard and fast rule, but that tends to be my experience. So I get a little fading with these. It's super dewy. You have to like that look. So for me, these are average. It's a good blush, and I think for the $20 price point, it is a nice purchase, but it's going in the it's average category. I feel like everything has been in it's average today. But let's talk about a dupe. This has been super popular because, as you can see, it's incredibly similar to the Charlotte Tilbury highlighter wand. So this is the Flower Beauty Spotlight Liquid Highlighter. This for me, where should I swatch this? Let's go up here. This for me is incredibly similar to the Charlotte Tilbury. Maybe not an exact dupe, but for a fraction of the price, you're gonna get a very comparable product that's gonna sit very similarly on the skin, good wear time, good blendability, minimal like glitter, like it's actually gonna give you a really beautiful glow. So for me, I'm gonna say I'm impressed. I think it is great. I don't think it's an exact dupe to the Charlotte Tilbury. For the difference in price though, I don't think you'll be disappointed by the Flower Beauty one. You know, I think this is a great product. My arm has little like reddish pink polka dots all over it because one of these blushes, I think it was this one from Saie, stayed very, very dewy, and then my bracelet would move up and down my arm, and it was just like rolling the blush onto my skin. So I'm eager to wash this off, but I hope this comparison was helpful. I've loved doing this ranking series. I will leave everything linked as always. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.